This is the Conservative Czar, October 22nd, 2012. I want to talk today about a tricky subject for conservatives and Republicans and a conservative third party if that moves forward. And it has to do with foreign policy and it has to do with war. And I want to start with my own viewpoint on what happened, especially after September 11th. 2001 when we were attacked. At that particular time, I've said this over and over again. I think from that moment until March or April of 2003, George Bush was one of the great presidents in foreign policy in the history of the country. He really did a spectacular job. And I supported the efforts of George Bush going into Afghanistan and going into Iraq. My own personal opinion, I didn't care about the weapons of mass destruction. I basically thought about those wars in two ways. One is Muslim terrorists attacked us. We are going to attack them, and we're going to bring down two of their governments, two terrorist states that were Muslim, and we're going to bring them down. And you hit us again, we'll bring down two more. And I also had at that same time the attitude that strategically, not Afghanistan so much, but Iraq was in our strategic interest. If you take a look at the map of the Middle East, Iraq is right in the middle of everything. And I thought strategically we could go into the region and influence the Mideast from that position in a short run. I wasn't thinking that we're going to be there for that long. That changed in the March. In Iraq, it changed in March and April of 2003. Up until that time, the Bush administration was clear that they wanted to have a war, go into Iraq, make whatever modest changes they can make, set up a provisional government, and get out. That was the position of, as far as we could tell, George Bush. It was certainly the position, the articulated position of Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense. In the first month after we had conquered Iraq and put in a civilian government, that was precisely the plan of the United States of America, to go in there and get out as soon as we can. That all changed. George Bush changed his mind. Donald Rumsfeld seems to have changed his mind in March and April of 2003, when we had a concerted change of opinion that we were going to build a nation. We sent over Ambassador Bremer, who proceeded and put the United States in a position of extreme vulnerability. It was a disaster. And it started right from the beginning when Bremer said, we're not going to make any changes here until the Iraqis have a constitution. We're going to write a constitution with them and for them. A ridiculous idea. And this was 2003. We got out in 2011. And all of that period of time, from that entire, every single death there, whether it be American, Muslim, innocent, or guilty, in that period of time was a waste of lives. Because we accomplished not one thing from 2003 to 2011. Not a thing. And it was a disaster. I will spend some time, other time, on the particulars of that disaster. But I don't think any reasonable person who takes any time at all can think otherwise. We are in a situation in Iraq where we are going to have a civil war, at the very least, a civil war and probable partition, with the ascendancy of Iran in at least half of Iraq, and constant ongoing battles in another third of Iraq. And then we're going to have a Kurdistan, an independent Kurdish nation. By the way, only one of the very few nations or enclaves in the Muslim world that is slightly pro-Western. They're going to be surrounded. They're going to be surrounded by Iran. They're going to be surrounded by the Turks. They're going to be surrounded on all sides by their enemies. I don't know how Kurdistan is going to, what I call Kurdistan, the Kurdish enclave in Iraq is going to survive. But all of that we could have gotten in much better shape in 2003. In 2003, we were setting up a provisional government, and it would have unraveled. We would have had a civil war, and we would have had a partition. I believe that is true. But it would have happened in 2004, and everything would be over, and we wouldn't have lost lives, and we wouldn't have had a war there. In Afghanistan, the time framing is it's not the timing in Afghanistan of pinning when we failed is more difficult to articulate. The war going into Afghanistan was just. It was a just war. And we defeated the Taliban. We took over the country within months. And we've been there ever since trying to stabilize a government which is not possible to stabilize. We are going to lose in Afghanistan. When the United States leaves, and we made this idiotic timetable to tell the Taliban when we're going to leave. They can sit back and judge every single battle, every single war, every single negotiations, every single strategy on the idea, hey, we can just wait it out. We can take this government over anytime we want. Let's wait or have patience. We're going to lose Afghanistan. Now, the reason I'm saying all this is because interventionism all over the world, but particularly in the Middle East, has not worked well for us. Now, I'm going to admit to something here. I personally supported the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq until March or April of 2003, when I changed my mind. And I said, this is futile. The one person who has been semi-consistent on this is Ron Paul. Now, I opposed him here. He didn't want to go into Iraq. I wanted to go into it. I thought it was a good idea. I went along with the mainstream. Bush had been doing such a good job. And I was wrong. I was not wrong because the war wasn't just. I wasn't wrong because we accomplished things right away. I was wrong because war gets us entangled in things beyond our knowledge, beyond what we can figure out. It has a life of its own. There are ways it turns and twists that we cannot predict. In the case of Iraq, it was another 8-year war. In the case of Afghanistan, it was another 9 years of war. That even though the original intent was right, the political reality is that war is unpredictable. And Ron Paul was right. He was right. He was right to say, stay out of Iraq. And, he supported the war in Afghanistan. But he would have had his belief is that wars need to be controlled by Congress more than they are now. And I have to say he's right. And this gets me, the important point of this whole discussion is, what should the policy of a traditional conservative, a new conservative third party, or at all, or anything else, what should that position be? Should we be warlike, like Mitt Romney and others, or should we be more isolationist than Ron Paul? If we take the experience of Iraq and Afghanistan, Ron Paul was more right than me and more right than anybody else in the Republican Party. And on this issue, traditional conservatives and conservatives in planning out our future need to take this into serious consideration. This is the Conservative Czar. See you next time.